Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. It's a lot of people here tonight. That's nice. Yeah, nice to see people taking the time to follow a spiritual, develop the spiritual aspects of our lives, and these opportunities to cultivate our humanness in the best of ways. So this is a very ancient tradition, going probably before the time of the Buddha, but certainly at the time of the Buddha, the gathering around the lay people would join in with the monastics on the lunar quarters, and the lunar quarter to practice working with the precepts, just as we did, offered the opportunity for the 8 precepts, 3 refuges and 8 precepts, but also practicing, listening to Dhamma, practicing Dhamma. It's an old tradition, and it's happening all over the world today. So there's been a wave of this happening throughout from the beginning of the first time zone that hit Saturday the 9th of August. There's just this wave, and the wave continues. So after being here in Western Europe and Britain, it'll. I don't think there's anything in the middle of the Atlantic, but I shouldn't assume too much. Maybe somebody's out on a boat practicing the refuges and precepts. But then it'll hit the east coast of North America. Communities will be practicing like this, and it'll spread its way across and keep going. And so this wave of wholesome intention. And so we're part of a wave of goodness, and it's not to form an identity or an ego around that. Oh, I'm good. No, it's around just to recognize that this is wholesome action, wholesome karma. So, the Buddha, what the Buddha offered in his lifetime, and which has been handed down for 2.5 millennia, a little bit longer than that. The teachings were eventually recorded. Initially, they were oral tradition, and then they were eventually, after a few hundred years, they were recorded in books and handed down. And in particular, the Theravada tradition, it's quite famous for its organizational aspects. It's the lists. You've got all these lists, and we each have a different relationship to lists. But it's meant to be a way of support, of helping organize, a way of framing the Buddha's teachings to help us focus on and examine our own experience of life, our own experience, momentary experience of living, or to reflect on what comes up, memories, feelings, emotions, or to reflect on fears of the future, worries, and things like that. So it's a way of framing, focusing, placing a lens on the various aspects, and in particular the things that bind us to dukkha, to stress, suffering, discontent, dis-ease, the things that are obstructions, and also to not so let us focus on not grasping at all the good things, all the things that the happiness is, and things which are not ultimately satisfying. And we tend to hang on to them and hold on to them tightly, grasping, clinging, and this is also dukkha. This is unsatisfactory. It's stressful. Hanging on to the wanted and the wholesome and the right, grasping it in the wrong way is also stressful. So one of the things, well, the thing I'd like to focus on this evening is referred to as the five faculties, or it's often, or sometimes called the five spiritual faculties. In the Pali language, pancha indriya, pancha, five, indriya, faculties, spiritual faculties. It's an easy list to remember. It's also the exact same list appears in a different context called the five strengths or powers, and it's framed slightly differently, but it's the same qualities. And so these are to be reflected upon and cultivated. It's to give us a framework to examine, well, where am I at with these five faculties or qualities or spiritual faculties, and to use them to cultivate, to bhavana. This is Pali word, and to cultivate, to bring into being in a wholesome way. And so the five, I won't focus on Pali so much because I might just say it once, but after that I'll just be using the English, okay? And so the first five is saddha in the Pali language, and it's there's various, like almost all Pali terms, there's various translations into the English and into other languages. So saddha is probably most frequently translated as faith. But in the English language, faith, depending on our culture and our upbringing and when we were brought up, some time and place, faith can maybe have some tones. It might sort of shroud the depth of that. It's also confidence, trust. So I like to use the different translations to give it shape. So it's not just around having faith in something or a faith-based practice or faith-based religion. So you have faith, confidence, trust. The second of the five is virya, is the Pali word. It's usually translated primarily as energy, but also perseverance is, I think, a really good translation, that perseverance, staying with something. So it's not just energy as in lots of energy, it's also effort, and that would fit in, we'd use also the right efforts that appear in the Noble Eightfold Path. Cultivating things, bringing things, wholesome things into being, wholesome things that are already present to nourish those, and to refrain from picking up things which are unwholesome, or to help shed those unwholesome things that are already in our habitual ways of acting. So that's the right efforts. But so it's energy, but it's an effort. But its right effort is also around just right. Okay, is this too much effort? Is this too much energy? Is it too much zeal? Or is it can also lead us into, or it can create obstacles to our progress on the path. Now, obviously, I'll go back and flesh these out, but I'll just lay out the five. So the third and middle one of the five is sati, which is typically translated as mindfulness. So this is a word that's I'm glad to see that has become just a word in different cultures, which is very, very common in the last 30 years, and in the framework of spiritual practice, mindfulness-based practices, mindfulness. It's pervasive in society, and I find that very beautiful. So mindfulness, the word sati itself, it can also just mean memory, or to recollect, to hold something in mind, to remember that. And so that's I think an important aspect of, or a way of translating it. And then the fourth one, samadhi. Probably the most common translation is concentration, but it's a translation that I'm finding more and more people that are sharing Dhamma in English, sharing meditation, are tending more and more to stay away from concentration, but more sort of meditative calm, collectedness. There's a collectedness, a calming, a settling of the mind and heart. Whereas concentrated, it's interesting, like when Lumpur Pasana was here a couple of weeks ago, and he touched on, this that concentrate also means there's one aspect of the word concentrate in English is to make small, to condense and to make small. And so, whereas is that really what we're trying to do with the mind and heart? Are we trying to make it small, or are we trying to see what's present? So these are I'm posing those as questions. So, so samadhi. So I'll use meditative calm this evening, collectedness. And then the last one, the Pali word panya, and the most common translation would be wisdom, although I tend to stay away from that translation myself. The translation that resonates more in my own practice is discernment. Discernment, to really, and to that seeing, discerning, okay, what's real and what's not real. What's real. And the ultimate panya is to really penetrate, to not just understand intellectually the impermanence, the transiency, the ephemeral quality of all things, but to really penetrate that. So that's the ultimate panya, also to really clearly see the dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness and the stress in grasping anything, and then also the empty not self nature of all things, and so that's the hallmarks of panya. So we have these five. So the interesting, well, for me, what I find very interesting about this list, these spiritual faculties, is their balancing nature. And this is not. This is very much spoken about, very much reflected upon with these teachings. This particular teaching is that the balancing factor. You've got five, and with so you've got two balancing pairs. Okay, so you have saddha and panya. So you have faith and wisdom balancing each other. And I'll go into this more in a moment. Then you have the energy effort balanced by the meditative calm. And in the middle, right in the middle, is mindfulness, sati. So then that's the sort of overarching, because without mindfulness, we won't see what we're doing. We won't actually be aware and mindful of of the faith that we might or might not be experiencing. We won't be able to reflect on our experience of life, to develop the panya. We won't maybe see the imbalance between those two. Although they all need to be cultivated, developed, and penetrated, is that there needs to be a balance. So the same that when we get into energy and effort, is our effort and energy out of balance? Is there so much zeal and sort of kind of out of control exuberance and energy which is not balanced through the meditative calm to just be that moderator? So, and the Buddha, he taught the middle way. He taught the middle way, and so that in the middle we have that middle way of the awareness. We're aware. So I'll go now flesh out a little bit more this balancing. This clock seems to be on strike. So, saddha, faith. I think it's safe to say that none of us would be in this room right now if we didn't have some sort of confidence, some sort of trust, some sort of faith that there is something worthwhile in these teachings, in these practices. Thank you. What brought us here? Whether we're here living, taking up the monastic life, anagarkas, novices, siladhara, anagarkas, because, or coming and staying as a guest, or coming and living here as a long-term lay resident, coming as a visitor. What got us in the car tonight? Something, and whether we're here for the first time, and obviously I see people that come here very frequently, there was some spark, some sort of sense that we've heard something, we've been touched by something, and there's that trust that this is at least worthy to be explored, to explore this. There's something in us that yearns for the good, that yearns for cultivating the heart and mind in a way that brings peace and stability in our unshakability, not just stability, but unshakability into our life. Because life is unstable. I mean, everything. There's nothing that's ultimately stable. Then, when we start to have contact with spiritual teachings, and we should. Hopefully, we've been encouraged to be. When we go someplace new around spiritual teachings, to check it out. Just. Also, first of all, does this resonate with us? Is this a way of presenting spiritual teachings? Whether it's Buddhist, whatever, is this being presented in a way that resonates enough to continue to check it out? Are the people that are around, do we have trust and faith and confidence in the people who are presenting that? And that can only come through time. To see, are the behaviors of those people, are they in line with the teachings? Many spiritual communities have gone astray. Things have gone wrong, or there's been forms of abuse. There's been forms of sort of spiritual abuse. It's not just around physical or psychological, but just spiritual abuse. Do the teachings, do they ring, when putting them into practice? So this is not a faith, a belief. This is not a belief system. The Buddha Dhamma is not a belief system. It's not about just taking on this belief system and then, okay, I've got it. No. Pick up the teachings. We hear the teachings, read the teachings, experience them, pick them up. Apply our own, look at our own life through the lens of Dhamma, Buddha Dhamma. Test it out. The Buddha famously said, Ahimsako, come and see. Come and check this out for yourself. Does this ring true? And then, as time goes by, it might be a short while, it might be a long while, but then we get what's often referred to as confirmed confidence. It's not just taking things on faith and trust and confidence that these work, but then we have confirmed, and we're actually penetrating. We're seeing the fruits of the practice. That's why associating with the wise. So there's that lovely line in the chant, the highest blessings, the Mangala Sutta. And when we chant in the English, associating with the wise, but don't just, okay, they're wise, just don't take it on board right away, but through association. And if somebody, you really have that confidence, and all right, seeing other people's, are perceived, the perceptions that we might have, and how other people have benefited from the practice. That's why I feel just so blessed that I'm part of a lineage, a tradition which has, both in the monastic side and also in the lay community, like really people that have practiced this for decades, or maybe not even that long, but you can see that there's fruits to the practice. People make changes. For instance, I was speaking to somebody recently how they had knew somebody that I know now, but they knew them years ago, and they said, oh, they've seen a complete transformation in this person, positive transformation. And then also seeing in ourselves to reflect on how when I've become involved in something wholesome, has there been really kind of tangible benefits and growth as a human being? So this brings confirmed confidence in the teachings. Confirmed confidence in living, for instance, with the precepts. If we work with the precepts, okay, what kind of changes does that bring about? Does it bring about some more fearlessness, more calm? How does that affect us? And this takes endeavor, and so maybe that's another translation. Applied endeavor to energy, to this virya, energy, effort. It's not about necessary strength or giving all of our energy in something, but it's more that applied, sustained, consistent effort. Doesn't mean it needs to be a flatliner, because our energies also ebb and flow throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, and we have different energy. But that interest, that spark that keeps us going even through these ups and downs, because sometimes we can hit real lows in our spiritual practice. We can maybe feel that we're not making progress, or it's not the progress that we thought, and then of course, how can we really measure it anyway? Like, how do we measure? And if we're looking for certain things, especially with meditation, how many of us ever really feel like it's calm enough, or concentrated enough, or long enough? Maybe looking in the wrong place. So, but it's that applied, that consistent, I'm going to practice. And as I think we're all aware, practice is not just on the cushion or on the walking meditation path. Those are tools. That's not the goal. The goal is not to be good at walking meditation. The goal is not to be good at sitting meditation. We cultivate them, yes. We become adept at them. We get familiar with it. We're able to use that, like getting used to using any tool. And those are the tools for awakening. These are the tools leading us to peace and calm, to insight, to panya, to discernment. These are the tools. It's not about just zoning out, getting into some sort of trance, just shutting everything out, but allowing the mind and heart to settle. Allow that mind and heart to settle. So that takes energy. So that energy that's the one that effort is balanced with samadhi. So, applying that. So it's the calming. So if we become too energetic, maybe too overzealous, just to have that meditative calm, to first of all spot that through sati. So this is where they're all feeding into each other. It's not a linear. It's not just 1 through 5. I'm going to develop faith, and I'm going to do, and then the last one will be wisdom. They're all supporting each other along the way. This sort of flow, ebb and flow. Meditative calm helps us see if we're lacking in confidence, if we're lacking that mindfulness and meditative calm. Sees if the energy and effort is out of balance. If we're just pushing too much, and maybe even meditating too much, and just hoping that the penny will drop, that some sort of boom, something's going to happen. This huge break, looking for the breakthrough. And maybe we've read texts. You might read some famous old poem about the awakening experience of something. Oh, the teacup fell off the tray and it shattered, and boom. Then the person in the room that heard that was enlightened right there. Or the wick, the little flame of the wick went out, and so did all defilements of the person that witnessed that. And these are lovely images. I'm not trying to make fun of that. But sometimes, I know for myself, you read that and you think, well, I've just got sore knees. And, I still feel greed and irritation and things. And so the Buddha kept emphasizing, this is a gradual path. We don't know what, people talk about this instant awakening, instant enlightenment, but we don't. Do we have the backstory? Do we have the backstory of how many years or lifetimes or eons maybe that person had been cultivating spiritual faculties, the spiritual path? And then there might be just this thing, something happens. But for the Buddha's own attendant, Venerable Ananda, his awakening, as is recorded in our tradition, happened. He was really striving, because he had been told that if he didn't realize full awakening by morning, he would not be able to participate in a Sangha gathering. This was soon after the Buddha's final passing away. And Venerable Ananda was not an arahant. He was not a fully awakened being. And yet he had all this knowledge of the Buddha's teachings. And he wasn't going to be allowed to sit in the assembly because you had to be a fully awakened being. And so he was striving, as it's recorded. And then the night was passing, and as it's recorded, he was exhausted. And he thought, well, whatever happens tomorrow, it's going to be a long day, so I'm going to just get some rest. So he sat down on a bench so that he could lie down. And somewhere between the seated posture and the lying posture, as he was just letting go to have a rest, is that he realized his full awakening. It was just that letting go. He had sort of, I read it as he's like, well, I'm just going to get some sleep and relax a little bit. I need to take the pressure off. And the way I read that is he was over-striving. The energy, the effort was not in balance. And so, interesting image. If we're constantly looking for result, if we're constantly striving and measuring, instead of as Lumpur Cha, who I never met, but he referred to as the earthworm practice. Earthworm is just kind of plowing through the earth with its head down, just plowing through, blind, going through the earth. Just keep going, up and down. Sometimes I'll rescue a worm, or on the side of my walking meditation path, maybe see a worm kind of trying to make its way along, and really struggling and kind of getting up on a piece of grass, or thinking of falling off, or getting halfway up a little slope and then sliding all the way back down to the bottom, starting over again. Just try again, keep going. So this is with confidence, with this saddha, with faith, confidence. Just, okay, I'm going to keep going. No, I'm in a low, I'm in a spiritual low. No, keep going. Look around us. Look at the other people. Look at the... I really appreciate reading spiritual biographies in whatever tradition. Whether it's Buddhist or otherwise, whether it's Theravada or otherwise, it doesn't matter to me. This is about human beings striving and awakening. These human beings, really benefiting from the wholesome efforts that they put in. I get great fuel from that. All the time, this cultivating this sati, mindfulness. To be honest, the precepts were recited tonight. The fourth of the precepts. To refrain from lying, and to not lie to ourselves. To be honest with ourselves of what we're experiencing. To not just get into sort of a spiritual band-aid of just covered over, wallpaper over the things that we might see in our own heart, in our own mind. But with what oftentimes people say a non-judgmental attitude, and that I think I understand what's being said by that. But I would suggest not being completely non-judgmental. I think we also always need to keep in mind our an ethical judgment of what's there, in terms of, is it wholesome, is it unwholesome? Because otherwise, if we just kind of, this is non-judgmental, and we have maybe some really unwholesome stuff coming up, we need to at least recognize that so that we don't act on that. The non-judgmental aspect, the way I work with it myself, is around not forming an identity, not judging myself just because I'm experiencing maybe an unwholesome emotion or unwholesome thought. Is it more, step back, allow them all, recognize everything, and just, I see this as unwholesome, but letting that go. Don't form an identity. Don't beat ourselves up, I think, is a way of also being non-judgmental, not beat ourselves up just because of these old conditioning. Might be fairly new conditioning, but to be able to experience that, to see it, or mindful of it, to nourish the things that are worthy of nourishing, nourish the wholesome, nurture the wholesome, and let go of the unwholesome, to not act on that. But all the while, going back to this idea of non-identity, is not, I'm a terrible meditator because I'm still, after 30 years experiencing, I've got these unwholesome impulses, or, this or that. Well, okay, you hear that, you're mindful of that, and don't buy that. Don't buy that. This is old habits of thinking. And to look at the wholesome aspect of these practices and how each one of us as an individual is applying that. Now, discernment. It's all leading to, here again, these can all be cultivated simultaneously. Maybe each, maybe deepening and at different times, maturing, coming into maturation at different times. But that discernment, really seeing clearly, what's real? What's real? We hear the teachings, we see the teachings, we come across them, we apply them. We need to apply them to our experience, as I said earlier, our experience of being a human being. To look, is everything impermanent? We hear that phrase. Is that true? Yes, have enough confidence that to look. If we immediately just dismiss that and go, not true, then there's not that confidence that at least to be checked out, ehipassiko, come and see, take a look at this. Take a look. Okay, is that, and to look at our experiences and to look around us. And see, take a look and see. Then it goes from that saddha, confidence, faith, trust, to, as I said earlier, confirmed. It's confirmed. Then it becomes gut knowledge. This is vipassana. Okay, so I would say most of us have probably heard this term vipassana for the meditation techniques. The insight meditation. It's a really good translation, insight, because passa means to see, and vi is typically looks at to see into, to see clearly, to see into. So insight. So what's the insight? The insight is impermanence, the not self-empty nature, and the unsatisfactory, stressful nature of all conditioned things. And anything that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, or feel as an emotion is conditioned. And that statement in itself, check it out. Take a look. It's not an intellectual exercise. If we could do this intellectually, there would be a lot more fully awakened beings in the world. We could take courses. We could do, a master's degree in Nibbana. I've got a PhD in awakening. So that'd be nice. There might be PhDs in that, but maybe I shouldn't assume that they're not awakened beings anyway. So yeah, just as a reminder, before closing off this reflection, wanted to, for those of us who have come across this very pivotal, very key, it's one of the key teachings in the Buddha Dhamma and our tradition, maybe also in other traditions. I'm not overly versed in those, but as a reminder, yeah, for those of us who have worked with this or come across this, and for those of us who haven't come across this teaching, it's an introduction, and for all of us, it's an encouragement to pick this up, apply these teachings. The Buddha, he spent 45 years sharing what his insights were. And they weren't handed down to this day for nothing. There's a reason why they were handed down. And that's because they work. They work and they're available. This is equal opportunity practice, whether we're in robes, not in robes, whether we have been in monastic life or not. So at the point, the teachings, the Buddha said, open hand. There were no, in the Theravada, there's no secret, hidden teachings. These teachings are equally available to all of us. And so encourage all of us to use, really cultivate our reflective capacity and not get overly focused on the meditative calm, the samadhi, trying to just absorb into our meditation and cultivate that. That's the tool to insight. Use it as a tool to insight. Use that meditative calm to reflect on experience so that we're clear about what thoughts and feelings are, emotions are coming into the heart and mind. Not to just put a lid on everything and get lost in that as necessarily success in and of itself in our spiritual practice, our meditative practice. Without the insight, without really, really clearly seeing vipassana, without really clearing seeing and letting go of that which needs to be let go of, utilizing what we can, the nourishing, nurturing without grasping insight as well, without forming an identity. This is our goal, and so that we can hopefully, really cultivate this unshakable, unconditional peace and well-being. A peace and well-being not based on any set of conditions. This is the legacy of the Buddha, and let's do it. I'll close there.
Can chant sharing an aspiration in Pali, page 32. Imena punya kamena upachaya kunutara ajariyo pakara Jamata pita jayataka Suryo janti maraja Kunawanta narapija brahmamara Ja indha jalokapala Ja tevata Yamo mita manusa jamachata verika pijasa pesata sukhi hontu punyani pakatani me sukhan jati vita tentu kipang Pape tawo matang อิมินาปุญญกรรมเมนะอิมินาอุทิเสนะจะคิปะหังสุลเพเจวตันหุปาทานะเชทนังเยสันตานิหินาธัมมายาวานิพานะโตมัมมังนาสันตุสัพพทาเยวายาตชาโตภเวอุชุจิตังสติปัญญาสันเลโควิริยมหินามาราลาพันตุโนกาสังกาตุนจาวิริเยสุเมพุทธาทิปวโรนาโทธัมโมนาโทวรุตตโมนาโทปัจเจกพุทโธจะสังโฆนาโทตโรมะมังเตโสตมานุภาเวนามาโรกาสันลาพันตุมา Closing homage in Pali. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavantaṃ Abhivati Sawakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno